What strategies do you use in your approach to correcting misinformation or misunderstanding in various settings? Wow. Okay. So what strategy, we'll start with the first one and then, so other than holding barbell medicine seminars and all the information that is already being disseminated through barbell medicine, of course, let me tell you a story. So the story is about my life. I previously, particularly early on in barbell medicine, I thought it was my job to police the internet to make sure that no BS was being written anywhere that could potentially harm anyone, and I needed to correct everybody. That's a fool's errand, because not only can you never get anywhere close to all of it, you're not actually changing anyone's mind. I still do this from time to time because I'm not very smart. I told you my GPA earlier, so you guys should be well aware of like my ability to like learn things, so not high. So I still do this at times because either I am a glutton for punishment or just, again, not smart, don't learn a lesson. But one thing I've realized is that more productive use of my time, our time, is to actually just create more information. So effectively, like, if somebody's saying something silly on the internet, like, I can't stop them from saying that, and me directly challenging them is unlikely to work out in my favor. But if I write an article about that particular thing, or make like a long, series, like a tutorial or like a Instagram story, rant thing, that'll reach way more people, help more people, whatever. I particularly like writing stuff or making a YouTube video or whatever, stuff that doesn't disappear and is long-lasting content. That tends to be good because a lot of people are going to see it. Then it's there, I can refer people to it, and then it allows me to really flesh out my ideas. The cool thing is, if I can find some common ground with that person who I originally disagreed with, on occasion, you can sort of strike up a conversation based on that. It's rare, but it has happened before where I end up agreeing with people that have initially been like, oh no, this makes me angry because you're wrong. But it's possible. So my recommendation is for like how to go about this is not correcting people. That writing reflex can occur. I do think in professional settings, it's a little different because usually if you come in guns a-blazing with a bunch of evidence that you're willing to just give people and say, hey, if you have some time, check this out, read it, particularly if they're guidelines or like, bulletins or whatever, those tend to be like, oh shoot, I didn't actually know this. So I think you can do that in professional settings, but in more social settings or like on social media or amongst friends, I probably just wouldn't do that, and I'd focus on creating original content. That would be my take.
Yeah, I agree. The context matters a whole lot here. And so within the public sphere, the social media sphere, things like that, I'll go ahead and say I'm smarter than Jordan, and that I just don't do it. I don't care to engage with people or argue with people or try to go out and correct misinformation. I'm happy to just hear my recommendations. Here's why these are my recommendations, and you people out there are free to take them or not, and that's kind of your decision. And so I actually take a similar approach with patients even, because sometimes clinicians, doctors, healthcare professionals, can get really, really, really overly invested and like paternalistic and like feel excessively responsible for this stuff. And assuming that I have discussed with somebody and feel like I've gotten them adequately educated and I know that I've gotten through to them and my message is clear and been understood, if they choose to pursue a different route with things, then fine, I feel like I've done my job. Whereas sometimes people might take offense to it if somebody doesn't follow their advice, or they might really beat themselves up or get too worked up about it. I see this more often when patients say they want to leave the hospital during the course of my treatment, and I go and I educate them about why I'm recommending maybe they stay, and if I have more work to do or whatever. And if they say, no, I'm leaving, then okay, I can't really beat myself up too much about that. And in social media, I ignore all of that stuff. I definitely don't go down the rabbit hole of arguing with people, or I get tagged every day in things. People like, here, look at this. What are your thoughts? I don't have thoughts. My thoughts have been expressed elsewhere, and you can, again, take my recommendations or not, and that's fine. One day we're all gonna die and things are gonna be just fine. So that doesn't bother me. In the professional setting, among other doctors, among other clinicians, I know, or at least I like to think, that I'm among peers who are going to be more receptive to evidence. And so if you've watched any of my lectures that I've given to other doctors on sarcopenia, or the cancer lecture, or really any of my talks that I've given, my slides are just littered with references and graphs and data and things like that. And that's something that it's obviously important for how we practice, but it's also a strategy to actually convince people that, hey, I actually, know what I'm talking about here, and here's my justification for my belief. Whereas in society, for a lot of this stuff, you don't necessarily need to have a really strong justification for your belief. You can just have beliefs. So if you listen to our last rehab podcast from Reno's Q&A, Michael Ray talked about this YouTube channel that me and him, he introduced me to, called Street Epistemology. And it's a guy who is actually in San Antonio, and he goes around and he'll meet somebody and he'll talk to them a little bit, and he'll elicit, tries to get them to make a claim about something that they believe. And then very gently, kindly, he'll start to delve into this belief and ask them just kind of pointed questions to try to get at the heart of why they believe what they believe. Oftentimes it ends up going down into like religion and things like that. But he's very good at it in terms of getting to why people believe what they believe. But overwhelmingly, what he ends up showing is people can't justify oftentimes what they believe. They just make shit up and they just believe what they believe. And we're very stupid creatures. And so, like Jordan said, it's a fool's errand to go out and try to save the world and correct everything that's wrong out there. So I just don't do it and wouldn't recommend it.
Have you been in an argument in the last week?
Have I been in an argument in the last week? No.
I've been in two.
You've been in two?
Well, to be fair, it's not my fault. One of them was like a scheduled podcast on like injury and technique.
Sure.
Yes. So that I did that to myself.
Yes.
But the second one, this guy was making the claim that because doctors don't receive like advanced nutrition training during medical school, that they should not be counseling patients on dietary changes. To which my reply is, why do you need to know all these intricacies to do that behavioral change counseling? You don't. Just like you don't need to be a programming whiz or like a high level coach in order to help people in achieve these physical activity guideline minimums. You don't need that. You need to be experienced to know what to do for troubleshooting, for like performance, right? Or have a big toolbox for cueing people in real time, sure. But to the extent that you need this huge fund of knowledge just to like be able to draw up some initial recommendations, like I don't think you need that.
Yeah.
Or I would prefer that in fact your toolkit was more robustly stocked with behavioral counseling techniques.
Yeah, I mean, most of you guys who are here this weekend, you probably are now feeling a little bit more comfortable at what the basic outlines of what we would recommend as a healthy dietary pattern might look like, right? So energy intake and protein, fiber, how the fat distribution looks like, and then within that, there's tons of latitude. So cool. You don't need to have hyper advanced training to be able to counsel somebody on some of that stuff. Yeah. But having those conversations is the hard part.